What would happen if you put a grenade in the barrel of a tank? This has been seen a lot in movies and even video games where the tank, when hit by a high-caliber shot or a grenade, explodes in an exaggerated way. Today we will check if this is real or, on the contrary, it is a cinematic fallacy. Despite their appearance, tank cannons are highly sensitive. That's why you'll see that modern tank cannons use a cap at the tip, and these are put on to prevent debris from causing obstructions in the barrel. To give you an idea of how sensitive a cannon is, an obstruction can, in the worst case, cause the total destruction of the cannon, leaving it like a flower. But what would happen if a tank doesn't have that cap and a grenade enters the barrel? Well, if a grenade enters a tank's barrel, 3 scenarios can occur. 2 really bad but unlikely scenarios, and 1 as bad but much more likely. First, we must consider that tank barrels are reloaded from the back, or in other words, they are rear-loaded, which means that at the back of the barrel we have a door that isolates the part where the crew is from the cannon chamber. This door is usually closed, and it only opens to put the ammunition in the reloading process. Among the bad and unlikely cases, it would be that the enemy put their grenade in the barrel just at the moment when the tank is with the cannon door open, causing the grenade to enter the compartment where the gunner is. Along with the ammunition in this case, the exploding grenade could detonate 1 or several ammunitions because the explosion would occur in a closed place. The shock waves and the heat could detonate the ammunitions that would blow the tank up in the air. This case would become much more likely if the tank has stored hit ammunitions, and this scenario is of course extremely unlikely because there is a very small time range between when the door opens and closes, but it is still possible. In fact, there is a quite curious video on the internet where a similar case is observed of a soldier who advances the tank, leaves the grenade, and it ends up exploding the tank. All happened in Syria. Although the authenticity of the video is not proven due to its quality, another really bad scenario. And what is more likely is that the soldier deposits the grenade in the loaded cannon, and it stays next to the ammunition. What would happen in this case? Well, first we must consider what type of ammunition is in the cannon. If the ammunition in the cannon is an armor-piercing fin-stabilized discarding sabot, it is very unlikely that its propellant charge will be detonated, as tank ammunition is very stable. However, it could generate a lot of debris that would damage the bore of the cannon. In the remote case that the propellant charge were activated, it would simply come out unbalanced due to the explosion of the grenade, damaging the cannon in the same way. But if we're talking about a high-explosive anti-tank or a high-explosive squash-head ammunition, things change. High-explosive heats have a secondary explosive that is detonated to launch a jet of metal, usually copper, to penetrate enemy armor. The projectile's explosive is detonated by a fuse that is at the tip of the projectile, which is relatively sensitive. A grenade would explode both the propellant charge and the projectile's explosive, as a chain effect would be formed, causing the complete destruction of the cannon. The same would happen with the high-explosive squash head. Remember that high-explosive squash head are munitions that act by exploding very strongly near the enemy armor, causing it to vibrate at high frequency, which consequently fractures it and generates a lot of shrapnel. These shrapnel detach inside the tank, taking down the entire crew. This ammunition is pure explosive, a concussion grenade. It could detonate, causing the complete destruction of the tank's cannon. If you wonder how ammunition can withstand its propellant charge but could not withstand a concussion grenade, this happens because tank ammunition is designed to withstand the explosion of its propellant charge from behind. On the other hand, the explosion of the grenade would be received from a quite vulnerable point of this, so the probability that a grenade detonates a high explosive hit or a high explosive squash head charge is quite considerable. Out of all these scenarios, consider that the cannons measure between 3 and 6 meters and that the grenades do not have completely spherical shapes. Also, these do not fit comfortably in the cannons, and the cannons are rarely pointing upwards or at an angle that facilitates the fall of the grenade into the cannon. We must also consider that the grenades were designed to destroy soft targets, not metals, so they really wouldn't cause structural damage to the tank, other than if they managed to detonate. Any ammunition And even remember that for a soldier to throw a grenade into the tank's cannon in the first place, he must put himself in the line of fire of the tank's machine gun and also expose himself to the enemy infantry, which would be quite risky. And even normally, tanks are tall and the cannon is not within reach of a person. All this explains why we have not seen well-documented cases of similar events, since they are extremely unlikely. And if any soldier has tried it, the most likely is that he has not lived to tell it. But what happens if a projectile enters? For example, a machine gun inside a tank barrel. This scenario is much more likely than the grenade ones. As with grenades, it depends quite a lot on the ammunition we're talking about, both the one fired by the machine gun and the one in the tank barrel, respectively. A 7.62 by 51 millimeters North Atlantic Treaty Organization projectile, usually fired by a machine gun, would have a minimal effect on a tank's ammunition, considering that tank ammunitions have a metallic shell and these generally have an inclined angle at the tip. In the worst-case scenario, a 7.62 by 51 millimeters ammunition could cause obstructions in the barrel, causing it to scratch when firing the tank's ammunition, of course rendering the barrel useless. But let's imagine that the machine gun that fired the projectile is a DSHK Soviet commonly used by irregular armed groups mounted on Toyota Slang Cruiser. These fire the 12.7 by 108 millimeters Soviet anti-material ammunition. A shot from this ammunition could perfectly penetrate high-explosive anti-tank and high-explosive squash head munitions, of course making them detonate and completely exploding the tank barrel.